Section 3.3.4. The following data represent the number of people aged 25 to 64 years covered by health insurance, private or government, in 2018. Approximate the mean and standard deviation for age. So the first thing we want to do is that we're looking at the age where we have the classes. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4 classes, and then we have the frequency, which is the number in millions. So what we want to do first is we want to figure out what are the class midpoints. So in the class midpoints, we need to look at the lower class limits. So we're going to take 25, add 35, and then divide that by 2. Okay, and so then when we take 25 and add 35, we get 60, and we divide that by 2, and that's going to give us 30. Number 2, we're then going to take 35 and 45 and divide that by 2. So that gives us 80 divided by 2, which gives us a midpoint of 40. And then we get 45 and then 55. So 45 plus 55 over 2, which gives us 100 divided by 2, which gives us 50. And then we need to go one more lower class. So one more is going to be 65 to 74. So we're going to use 65 and then 55. So 55 plus 65 and divide that by 2 gives us 120 divided by 2, which gives us 60. So let's take a look here. So in our chart, we have our class midpoint of 30, 40, 50, and then 60. And then we have our frequency of 23.5, 36.9, 35.7, and 21.9. Now, in order for us to get 705, we need to take 30 and multiply that by 23.5 to get 705. So we're taking these two numbers, so the class midpoint times the frequency, and then we're going to take 40, multiply that by 36.9 to get 1,476. And then over here, we're going to take 50 and multiply that by 35.7 to get 1,785. And then the last one here, we're going to take 60, multiply it by 21.9 to get 1,314. So now the next step is we want to find the sum of the frequencies. So we want to find the sum of the frequencies. So we're going to take 23.5, add 36.9, plus 35.7 plus 21.9. When we add those together, it's going to give us 118. And then we want to find the sum of the midpoints times the frequency. So that was 705 plus 1,476 plus 1,785 plus 1,314, which gives us 5,280. So now in order to find the mean is equal to the sum of the midpoints times the frequency divided by the sum of the frequencies. So that means we're going to take 5,280 and we're going to divide that by 118. So on our calculator, if we take 5,280 and divide that by 118 and round it to 2 decimal places, we get 44.75. So we get 44.75 for the mean. So now that we have our sample, our mean, our population mean, now we want to be able to find the standard deviation. So in order to do that, we first need to take our midpoints and then subtract the mean. So the first midpoint is 30, and then we're going to subtract 44.75. So we take 30 and then subtract 44.75 to get negative 14.75. Then we take our next midpoint, which is 40, and we're going to subtract 44.75. And so there we should get negative 4.75. And then we're going to take 50, which is our next midpoint, and subtract 44.75. So if we take 50, subtract 44.75, then we should get 5.25. And then we're going to take 60 and then subtract 44.75, and we should get 15.25. Let's verify that on our calculator. 60 minus 44.75 is 15.25. Okay, now in step 6, what we want to do is we want to take each of those values and square them. So we want to take negative 14.75 and square that. So let's go ahead and do that. We take negative 14.75 and then square that to get us 217.5625. And we're going to take negative 4.75 and square that. And that gives us 22.5625. And then we're going to take 5.25, square that. And that gives us 27.5625. And then 15.25 squared. Gives us 232.5625. So now what we're going to do is we're going to take what we squared and multiply it by the frequency. So we're going to take 217.5625 and we're going to multiply it by the first frequency, which is 23.5. So 217.5625 times 23.5 gives us 5,112.71875. And then we're going to take 22.5625. We're going to multiply that by the next frequency, which is 36.9. So we got 22.5625 times 36.9, which gives us 832.55625. And then we're going to take 27.5625 and multiply that by the third frequency, which is 35.7. So we have 983.98125. And then the last one we have 232.5625. And we're multiplying that by 21.9. 232.5625 times 21.9, and that gives us 5,093.11875. Okay, so now we can see that we have this table, the rest of our table. So we have our midpoint minus our mean, and then here each one of these values is now rounded to 2 decimal places. So what we want to do now is we want to find the sum of the last row, which is this row. So we want to add 5,112.72 plus 832.56 plus 983.98 plus 5,093.12. And that gives us 12,022.38. And so now we want to be able to solve for the variance and then the standard deviation. So the variance is equal to the sum of what we just found divided by the sum of the frequencies. So we have 12,022.38. And we're dividing that by 118. So we take 12,022.38 and divide that by 118. And rounding that to 2 decimal places, we have 101.88. So that's 101.88 for the variance. And then to find the standard deviation, it would equal the square root of the variance, which is the square root of 101.88. So let's take the square root of 101.88. And so that gives us 10.09 as our standard deviation.